Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
Okay.
Well, Chris, man, as you're wrapping up your drink, it's good to see you again, man. There's a lot going on in the world of politics. The government shut down still, and we see the election results. And I had a conversation with my son the other day, who lives in Brooklyn, by the way. And so he brought it up to me and he said, "Hey, what do you think about Mamdani being elected?" And I was saying, well, it's very interesting to see what happens, but I'm really more interested to hear what you have to say about it. And so just to give you a little background, you know him, but he's had a variety of experiences. So he went to school and, highly educated communities where, upper middle class was the norm at the school. And he's also been to schools that have, had a gun at it one time that somebody left over the weekend, and some of the poorest neighborhoods because there were good teachers there. And so because his mom and I understood the value of good teachers, we changed their schools based on who the quality teachers was. And sometimes it wasn't in the best neighborhoods, and sometimes they were in great neighborhoods. And so my older son's been in private schools. And so they've had this wide range of experience. They have white friends, Latino friends, Black friends, Asian friends. And so we never really taught them to be Democrat or Republican. I didn't even know how my son registered. I mean, because that's just not a thing in our house. Not that they're not to be politically active, but it's not our job as parents, to a certain degree, to tell them what party to be affiliated with. So he said, "You know what? I'm really happy that he was elected to the mayor." And one thing that I will tell you is that there are a lot of people that are in my age group that feel disenfranchised from the standpoint of the high cost of rent and the high cost of living here in New York. And quite frankly, he's young and he's energetic and he looks different. He in the sense that he represents somebody who brings hope. That's really the word that he was looking for. Just an overall sense of optimism. And so he says, "Well, how do you feel now that I've expressed my feelings?" And I said, I'm happy for you that he won. But the reality is that he made a lot of bold promises, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can deliver on those, because as a mayor, you have limited capacity to really create the type of change that he's talking about. So I think that's a good place to start, man. Just what are your thoughts about just the mayoral race? And then there were also some other races that were taking place, not too many, but special elections, not midterms yet. But it was very interesting to see how that turned out. And I wanted to get your take on what the tea leaves are saying to you from your perspective.
Well, there is a lot going on right now, and it's pretty interesting to see how all of the things that are happening right now are unfolding, and just the different perspectives and just the different emotions that are happening. And I mean, there's so many different ways we could have fanned out with this to start, but obviously starting off with, I think, which is one of the biggest media catchers, I think, outside of the New York mayoral race, I think SNAP or food stamps is probably the biggest thing. I think those are the two biggest things that I see anyways are going everywhere. And then a third thing we'll probably talk about, but it's interesting for you to get that perspective from somebody obviously living there and in that age group. But that's exactly the same exact phenomenon that propelled Trump to a second term in the White House.
I would agree.
There's a base or a group of people that feel left behind, that aren't being heard. And that was those blue collar workers, those documented immigrants, cited African American men, however you want to splice it up. He took from a lot of different traditionally Democratic cohorts that were feeling unheard and disenfranchised, and saw someone that, I'm going to hear you and I'm going to fix your woes. I'm going to fix what woes you right now. The thing about Mamdani, for my forgiveness for not pronouncing it right, but Mamdani, the thing about the mayoral race with him is, I think everybody kind of knew he was going to win. I think it's funny to see different Republicans pandering to him, the establishment people going, oh my God, we got to get this guy elected, right? Just simply like in a last ditch effort to kind of maybe try to show face or whatever, to try to get Cuomo in, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He appealed to people that do feel like these things are becoming outrageous. And by and large, that segment is not small anymore. That segment just isn't his group. That segment spans across Xennials, Millennials, and Gen Xers for the most part. Maybe a little bit of baby boomers. I don't think so, but mostly those Gen Xers, that are in their mid 40s or late 40s, that are, millennials a lot, and Gen Zers, right? Like the saying is, Gen Xers was, it's all about the money. Millennials were, where's the money? Where's the money? And Gen Z is, what is money? Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All of those, that group was told all of these rules and these regulations and these parameters and these guidelines and these sets of things to do and strive for. Millennials were get the degree and get the job and hustle culture and work 20 hours a day and screw everything else and minimalist, and you're going to be happy and you don't need. And now they're like, wait a minute, where's the promised land? Right. And then Z's were taught the same thing, get into debt, do this, work professional. And where is this? Right. And there was an interesting chart that showed, the biggest thing, which I think is a lot of people should be talking about, is layoffs, right? The amount of layoffs that are happening right now is massive. Nobody's even talking about that realistically, what that means. But most of the layoffs still are from, trimming, are from DOGE trimming, government trimming. The majority of them still are. I think it's like 150, 160,000 per private sector jobs, mostly white collar, were eliminated. And it's just happening all over every sector right now. But all of these, going back to that, those groups of people feel like they're excited. But the end result is, number one, regardless of who it is, most politicians are going to say whatever they need to say to get elected. That's just it. So that cycle always continues. And every now and then you do have heroes like this. Now, he is a hero of socialism. I firmly believe that he believes in that. I don't doubt that Mandami doesn't believe in what he stands for, his ideals, his political leanings, what he wants, his policy. I firmly believe he believes in that. But I mean, he was born, if you know his history, he was born and raised by wealthy, educated parents. He did not go without. So he has enjoyed a very wealthy, I don't want to know if it's wealthy, but he's enjoyed, by world standards, he has enjoyed a very lavish, wealthy life and upbringing. So he doesn't know what it is to go without. He doesn't know what it is to create or build something from scratch, to entrepreneur something from the ground up. That's what we should be teaching kids today. We should be teaching. But unfortunately, that's mass. That's the mob. That's the mob. So you're absolutely right, Len. I think the most dangerous thing here, Len, is what you just said, which was he has some pretty big things that he promised. And unfortunately, a lot of them go completely out of the scope of what he can do. And it's just going to there's not going to be anything that's going to happen. It's just going to slow the cog of progress in one direction. And it gives a voice to that ideal. But I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And you're going to have a lot of people that are going to continue to be frustrated, are going to continue to be let down, and are continuing not to see change. Because I believe firmly in my heart that those types of policies don't work, because they've never worked. And historically, we've never seen. So Albert Einstein says the theory of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. This is what we should be training on. We should be training on that, or talking about that, educating on that, and we're not, unfortunately. So that's such a really cool point that you bring up, because my son and I talked a little bit about this as well, and I said, to your point, I don't think that he has the ability to make this type of change. And he said, well, do you know
what he's proposing. What are some of the changes he's proposing? I say, yeah, I mean, I talk about this stuff. Of course I know. And I said, one of them is this idea of community grocery stores where it's like more of a cooperative. So you have different local growers and different people that contribute time to a local grocery store, which therefore brings down the prices. And so, if you have entire communities that rotate and give part of their time, then it reduces their grocery costs and things like that. And so I say, I hope he's successful, because one thing that we talked about before, even on this podcast, is that the United States is not a purely capitalistic economy. There are elements of socialism that are embedded in it. And so if he could find a way to generate enough socialism, but still honor the tenets of capitalism and the foundations of capitalism, then perhaps there might be a way. I don't see it, but I hope he can find a way to pull it off. Because when you look at this idea of busing, I said, busing is a really big revenue source in New York, because if you left it up to everybody to drive, there'd be gridlock all day, every day in the 5 boroughs. No traffic, nobody would travel. So transportation is a major source of income, and it's necessary for New York. I don't see that as a major turning point, but for some people that don't have the income to travel, to me, I think that's a real big problem to tackle without the requisite benefit from it, because I don't look at transportation. In fact, New York has a great transportation system. Their subways could be a little cleaner, but they're much cleaner than they were in the 80s and 90s. That's for darn sure, because I traveled them during both of those decades. And so, but we can talk a little bit about renting, but before we talk about that, just those two things. So groceries, using a communal perspective, and then also free transportation were some of the two of his big running points. Do you have any opinion about either of those?
Well, the problem that always stems from all of that types of action is the fact that resource management is always notoriously off, right? And you have people that don't know how to. Ideals and things like that don't balance books. Cities need budgets to balance. They need,
revenue.
Revenue. And the thing about that is that, and I want to just kind of back up a little bit to kind of base my point up a little bit more.
Okay.
I think the biggest issue that people have, and this is the issue that I had when leaving California, is that eventually you get to a point where, price is only an objection for someone when value isn't present, right? Or perceived value isn't there. So when I get up and I walk around or I drive around and the area I live in, you've been to where I live, there is the difference between, it's almost a half a point in taxes versus living in here versus living somewhere else on your property taxes, right? Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? That's a big chunk, by the way. That's like huge. If you understand, it's huge, right? So
yeah, because you're talking about the law of large numbers. So I mean,
right.
Yeah,
so
0.5% on a big number is significant.
Exactly. So, but the thing is that when you and even in that schools are to take into account, right, into those property taxes. Because, the property taxes are high, right? Mm-hmm. The reality though is that when you step out of your house and you go around the area and you go to the schools and your kids come home and you listen to what your kids are being taught in school. Like, for example, my kids do not have Veterans Day off this week. They go to school on Veterans Day in the school district here, because they go to school and either they have veterans educate there, or they go to veterans field trips, like go to the veteran memorials, or it's pretty interesting to see, right? So you see that value. You see where that money's going. You don't even think about those taxes or any of that money that's taken when you go, oh yeah, it's great. It's awesome because the government's taking care of all of this stuff that they say they're taking care of. You see that. One of the biggest reasons why I left California is that you go, I don't see what I'm paying for anymore. So at one point you go, dude, the value is not there anymore. This price for what you're saying I'm getting, it's not there anymore, because I know the value of what you used to get in California for the price you used to pay. And that value just isn't out there anymore. The California value of the 90s, please bring that back to compare to the California value today that you see in California. That's exactly what's in New York. And so you get these groups of people, and now you see Xennials, which are even more, I don't want to say intelligent, but they're more informed, right? Because information is more easily accessible, and they go, wait a minute, what the heck is going on here, dude? And in New York, it's outrageous, right? And then that leads to policy, which is what we were going to talk about, which is what I don't want to get into rent control, but look, I think that the ideal here is that more people need to realize that the problem with even with SNAP and all this stuff and like groceries being affordable and stuff, that needs to be given back down to the churches of America and the schools and the municipalities and the local townships, how it's supposed to be managed. The federal government should not be managing food supply stuff, SNAP benefits. That should be managed. That needs to be given back. But that's the problem is that more and more people don't go to church anymore. So more and more people don't tithe anymore, or they don't offer anymore. And that's why food banks are dry. And that's why government, it's very clear in scripture. And I just wanted to add that in to base up my argument. It's very clear in scripture, what scripture states about food and community and the government should not be controlling the food supply. The populace should be doing that. And that's why we have an issue, because the populace isn't going to church. So the populace doesn't even know how to give. So therefore, the government then has to be forced to take from the populace. And that's why you have candidates like Zohan who become popular, because he's telling you what you should be ethically doing anyways as a good citizen of the country. You should be tithing and giving that money so that a local church can buy food to give to the people who don't have enough to buy groceries. That's how the system's supposed to work. But we're so backwards in this country today that we think Beyonce is going to come and save us. But it's not happening anymore. Or Taylor Swift, by that matter. It could be Beyonce or Taylor Swift. It could be any of them. But in transportation, yes, transportation, there should be. But America was never built on the ideal of public transportation being the ideal. It's built on the ideal of individual people driving. Now, I think transportation, by the way, I've been to places with you. When we went to Spain together, I was like, wow, this is awesome. I would never own a car in Spain, right? But then when I get back to America, I go, this is awesome. I love to drive my Mercedes by myself and not be around anybody, right? So there is trade-offs to it, but I do think public transportation should be. But again, we look at, if we put, case in point, when we give those types of projects to government, they never work right. Case in point, the high-speed rail in California. This is a clear example of why we should never give those types of projects to public to the government, because it doesn't get done the right way, because there's no profit, because at the end of the day, it's people running this stuff. And if there is an incentive, then they're not going to do it. It's why you see so much corruption in government, because people are trying to figure out ways to make money. So I don't know if that's a little bit more, but it just never works. Where has it ever worked? Where's the example of it working?
Yeah,
that's what I find so hard about it.
Yeah, I agree. When you to your point about government intervention and government operations, because if you look at any entity ran by the government, DMV, one point, when you look at, the VA, unfortunately, they're not getting serviced with the highest levels of efficiency. Now, that's not true for all parts of the country, of course, but in your higher metropolis, higher population density places, the veterans aren't being served because, it's a government run organization and there's no incentive to compete. And so therefore there's no incentive to innovate. And so I certainly understand your point there. Going back to Mamdani, I really, on the one hand, we talk about government inefficiencies, but if you really think about what happened in that race, there were some real reasons why he won. It wasn't just his policies. It was the state of affairs. He won 50.4% of the vote, by the way. He received more votes than Cuomo and Sliwa put together. And so, and if you throw Adams in there, even though he dropped out of the race, he won more votes than all of them. Why is that? Well, if you look at the young population there, well, there are a couple things. Like, for example, 2 million ballots were cast just in that city mayoral race, which was the most since the 1970s. So that tells you that when people feel compelled, either positively or negatively, they go out and they vote. People who are comfortable, when you have a non-compulsory voting system, they're apathetic and they don't go and vote. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when you look at what's going on with younger adults, the median rent in New York City is between $3,100 and $4,200, depending upon if it's a 1, 2, or 3 bedroom apartment. $3,100 to $4,200. Now imagine you go to high school there, you go to college, and then you graduate and you decide, you're new in your profession, you're single, and you want to get an apartment. Bro, like your job, just the money you're paying for your apartment is going to be more than a lot of people make every month. And so there's a lot of people that are roommating together. And, so it's just not feasible for people to, afford that type of living incomes, which takes me to this whole concept of rental units and pricing freezes and all of this. And so that was one of the other things that he talked about, was this whole notion of making sure that rent is frozen, or at least, there's regulations with regard to how quickly it can go up. I wanted to get your take because I wanted to react when we were preparing for our conversation today. I said, I want to hear what you think about it, and I want to react in real time. And so I want to turn it over to you, man. And I'm really interested to hear your perspective about his idea about freezing rents and all of those things. If
you look at the data, to bring it back up one more time, if you look at the data of voting, all right, I don't know if you have this data, but it's broken down somewhere. You could find it. Someone can find it. We could put it up if that happens.
Okay.
But of the people that voted in the election for the mayoral election, and this again lends to your original point, which is these people are dissatisfied, right? They're not happy about the prices and about things and the way things are going. Mm-hmm. The majority of people that voted in the mayoral election have not lived in New York City for more than 5 years, or have lived there the least amount of time. Have you seen that data or looked at that data? So the majority of people that have lived in New York City for the longest periods of time, they're the ones who voted least for Mandemi. So the people that have lived there the least amount of time are the majority that voted for him. Isn't that interesting when you look at that data?
That doesn't surprise me though, because that suggests that a person who's living there is there because they're there for professional reasons. And, if they're 24 years old, that means that they moved there somewhere between 19 and 23, right? And so, if I'm there longer, therefore I'm not going to necessarily look at a younger candidate because I don't necessarily see the world through the same set of eyes. And so, I definitely think that's an interesting statistic, but I'm not really surprised by that because New York has always been a place that's attracted lots of people. I mean, if you look at the diversity with regard to, ethnicity, by languages, I think New York has the most languages of any city in the United States by far. And so I'm not really surprised by that, but it is very interesting. It is a very interesting statistic.
And you need to see that. Now,
so here's a question for you, Chris. Can I jump in real quick? Quick question, just because I want to make sure we don't jump off to a different subject. Okay. So the one thing that I think we both agree upon is that the way government is doing it is not working, right? Whether it's at the city level, state level, federal level, there is a bevy of problems we can outline, case by case. And so here's the question. If you are a 25-year-old professional living in New York, you're making 6 figures, but you're barely getting by. And in your entire lifetime, all you've seen are all of these old people in government talking down upon you. And you don't have a lifestyle that reflects the kind of money that you've invested in yourself, your education, and your knowledge, your skills, your trade. Would you want to have at least an opportunity for somebody that sounds a little bit different, that looks a little bit different, not in terms of like appearance, but in terms of what they're saying? Like, it looks different. It feels different. Would you go for that, or would you go for same old, same old? Because you talked earlier in your own words, you said insanity is the same thing, is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. That's kind of what they see with the old guard.
That's the toughest situation. That's the tough situation that we're all in. I think all of us are in the same tough situation, because the reality is that every single time I've seen this horse race, maybe we know too much now to know that he really isn't going to do anything. Because at the end of the day, what always works is what? Go find a way to make more money.
Figure it out.
Go find a way to go make more money, and go find a way to go use the legal loopholes to get the tax benefits, or whatever it is that you're looking for, or whatever you're trying to find. Go use this. The thing is this, it's a game. Go play the game. Just know the rules. I mean, that's really all there is to it. But the reality is that some people, here's what it goes down to. Those scariest people are lazy, ambitious people. He's a lazy, ambitious person. He's never had to do anything. He's never had to work. He's never had to.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him lazy, though. He's definitely not lazy, but I can understand. He might be privileged, but he's not lazy.
Maybe he's not lazy in the sense that we would normally call it, but he's not. He doesn't want to go start a business. He doesn't want to go fail.
Okay. Well,
I mean, campaign, and he could have failed at that, but that's easy. But he knew he was going to win. He knew he was going to win. He's in the right place at the right time. I don't know how I don't know how that works. It's fate. It's destiny. I don't know. It's interesting. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, if you're sitting, waiting, and relying on that to be your saving grace, that's just like sitting and waiting for anybody to come be your saving grace. And if you've lived enough as an adult, Len, you know that you got to get up and you got to go do it. Nothing is going to save you. Nothing's going to save you. So I feel bad for those people who sit there and go, oh, yay, thank you so much. And they're going to sit there and they're going to get their hearts broken. And they're going to be even more disenfranchised.
I hear what you're saying, but if you take, that's a microcosm because you're talking about one city, right? But you could use that same argument about voting in America. And, we understand that for you and I, whoever's in office isn't going to change our financial destiny and outcome.
Stop there, though. Stop there for a second, though. Okay, I get. Okay, but instead of giving me a free bus, Mandami, why don't you pay for me to get a trade as an electrician? Why don't you pay for me to get a trade as a plumber? Why don't you get paid for me to be a welder? Why don't you get paid for me to be some type of trade, vocational trade that's going to be here 10, 15 years from now in the AI change? Why doesn't Mandami do that for people instead of rent controlling me? Let the free market build more, right? And instead of building a grocery store, let the free market grocery store. And instead of building me a free bus, pay for me to get a vocation that's going to give me a skill or a trade so I can go work and feel like I earned what I earned and pay a decent wage and live it because the system works because you helped me get an education. That's the promise that everyone in America came here for, not the promise of a handout, not the promise of, yes, support and social programs when you fall and you slip, and some of us do, and all of us have needed those things at one point, but we get up and we work past it and we get on our feet. That's the dream and the gift of America, not this crap where we're going to manipulate everything. If Mandami wants to put his money where his mouth is, then figure out with all this money he wants to give away and all these free things, figure out how to teach people how to be skillfully adept to survive the next 10, 15, 20 years, since we're so smart, our elected people that are getting into office right now. We could talk so well. Figure out a way to make sure AI doesn't outsource human beings so that the human beings can wake up in New York City 15, 20 years from now and feel fulfilled and proud of their blossoming, booming city because they worked and they earned it instead of gotten a free rent-controlled anti-business, anti-God place, which is exactly what it is and exactly the direction it's going is. That's what I think. That's the stance. Figure out how to educate people and teach people skills that work. That's it.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Solution.
I don't disagree with that proposal. I'm just trying to get, the question that I'm really trying to drill down with you is that if you're somebody that's 25 years old living in that location, sure, you can decide to move, but there's few other places in the world that
so you vote that way.
So okay, so vote that way. So you wouldn't have voted for Mamdani. You would have voted for Cuomo. So what would you have expected from him?
I would have voted for Mandami. I would have if I was there if I'm in the scenario. This is what makes it so upsetting for me. This is what makes it so upsetting for me because at the end of the day, you and I both know it ends in heartache, Len. You and I both know it ends in heartache. You and I know. So what makes it so? You and I know we like go.
I hope you're wrong, but I don't think you are because I believe you. Yes.
Socialism doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. It's like,
but elements of it does in the right doses.
Yes,
so that's why I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm really trying.
I want to be too, but that's like that. But see,
it's pie in the sky, I think. But
it's pie in the sky.
But it's different, though. It's a different approach, Chris. I mean, that's the thing. Like nobody, like Cuomo wasn't bringing any new, fresh ideas. Sliwa wasn't, and we already saw what happened with Eric Adams. So he's the person that's bringing fresh ideas. So at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, they can say, you know what? We tried that and the next candidate, it's better. So the next candidate comes in and says, okay, you know what? I'm going to do rent controls. I'm going to do busing. I'm going to do, community. And they're going to say, no, we already tried that. That didn't work. Oh, well, how about we look at some free market options like providing. I know, but what I'm saying is that I like your proposal when you're talking about, HVAC and providing educational incentives and financial incentives to pursue those types of jobs, to pursue those types of professions that won't be taken over by AI, at least within the next 5 to 10 years. After that, I think robots are going to take over all of those things potentially. So, but to your point though, Chris, there's not another candidate that is around that's talking fresh, new ideas. His ideas, whether you agree with them or not, are different. And for that, I give him kudos, and I hope it works out for him. I don't think it will, but I hope it does.
No, because here's the thing too. The reality is that if Cuomo or Adams got elected or Squeevy, it would have been business as usual. You already see Hochul is fighting with him. So Hochul and him are going to go back.
Okay. Yeah.
Is Hochul going to go back and forth until she's out or she runs it? And Stefanik might get in, and then it's even more gridlock. Stefanik's a Trump ally. Who knows? A Republican governor of New York, heaven forbid, right? So that's always going to be the problem. It's not going to happen, but I mean, who knows? They never thought Florida would be a red state, and it is. We never thought California used to be a red state. It used to be a red state. Now it's the blue state, right? Think about that. California used to be a red state, right? Yes, he has fresh ideas. The problem is that 70% of him will never see the light of day because he's in a system that those ideas don't work. They don't work because he's not in a monarchy system or a system of government,
dictatorship,
or a dictatorship or
democracy.
Or state. He's in a republic. In a republic, those types of ideals and those types of policies don't work because it'd be like trying to run Microsoft programs on a Macintosh, Apple, right? It just doesn't work. Yeah. The software is not compatible, right? It just doesn't work. So. It's like trying to have an elephant reproduce with a giraffe. It doesn't work, right? So,
I think if he were governor, the governor, maybe. I think if he has a successful mayoral run, I think he could become the governor. But I think he made a very strategic error. And then I want to talk about Trump and what just happened in the elections. But I think his major strategic error was it started in his victory speech. And I think he thought that winning was won that night. Winning didn't happen that night. He just was hired for the job. Winning happens over the next 2-4+ years. And when he said Trump, there's 4 words, turn up the volume. I was like, bro, don't do that, because one, Trump has a bigger bully pulpit than you. And 2, he should have been more of a unifier in his speech, where he brought in, because there's a lot of Jewish people there that are concerned. He did touch upon that a little bit, but I think when you win, I think the tonality needs to be more unifying. And I think the problem is that that whole Trump phenomenon is really rubbing off on other people who don't have the same moxie and gravitas and narcissism that Trump does. And he can pull it off because he's been that way his entire life. Like when you look at Gavin Newsom trying to be like Trump and calling him, the nod father because he was falling asleep in one of his meetings and, printing in all caps. Now it's working because the Democrats need a fighter. So it is working, but trying to be somebody you're not long term doesn't work. And I think what Mamdani is doing, he's trying to show that he's a fighter and that he's going to fight for the people. But there has to be time and place. Victory speech, be a unifier. Now, he wasn't that. And so I think long term it's going to hurt him just because he bit off more than he can chew. My opinion. Time will tell. But what do you think about Trump? Because you look at what happened in New York, you look at what happened in New Jersey, you look at what happened in Virginia. Now, the first response might be, okay, well, those are all blue states. Okay, I'll give you that. But when you're talking about, I don't know if you heard about this or not, but in rural parts of Virginia, they flipped because of what's going on with the tariffs. And so the rural parts of Virginia are definitely red. So if you look at Trump's ratings, he's at a 39% approval rate, which means that he's at a 61% disapproval rate, which means historically that the House and the Senate will typically flip seats. And do you think that this election cycle, even though it's not the midterms yet, is the canary in the coal mine? What do you think?
So again, just backing up a little bit to get to this, to trail into this point, because I'm going to make
absolutely
it's going to tie in together.
All right.
You're going back to what you said fully again underscores the issue with candidates like Mandami and even Newsom. Again, in comparison to candidates and people like Trump v. Mandami, in correlation to them calling each other out and saying these things. And then also Newsom in comparison to him even trying to even think that he's on the level as an executive or even as a politician in regards to him competing with DeSantis, because you can't even compare the two. I mean, DeSantis is the one of the best executives, public executives you could probably ever see. Like if you could watch that guy, I mean, he's not charming like Newsom is, right? Because he's not fake. He's not fake, right? He doesn't have a snake. But I'm not here to talk about him right now. But again, that further illustrates wannabes. Newsom is trying to be like this gravatas guy like Trump. Mandami's trying to be outspoken, all this stuff. Look, those guys are not those things. They hide behind these bravados. They're really not those things. Trump is exactly what you said. Trump is who he is because that's who he is. Take it or love it or hate it, you're going to get what you're going to get. You just don't know what you're going to get. And that's why you see it. I was curious to know what your response was going to be, because I thought Mandami was going to keep it cool and calm and synergist, and he didn't. And I was disappointed, actually. I was actually really disappointed, Len, that he did it, because I went, dude, let's keep this way. And then as soon as you went that way, it reminded me of yours and I's conversation, because, Trump, be careful what Trump says. Trump should be careful what he says because his words have weight. This guy should be careful what he says, and so should Newsom, and so should Pelosi in her last interview before Prop 50 got passed. Trump is the vilest scum of the earth. Like, she has no business describing another human being that way, whether it's her enemy or not. And again,
especially not the president of the United States, and
and
that's on both sides of the aisle. But I agree with you, man.
It's on
I
both
definitely
sides.
agree.
But again, stop. If you are the party of tolerance, then stop it. Then act it, because and this is what fuels a Mandami, because they see it and they go, you say you're the party of tolerance, yet your actions aren't what your words are. Well, Mandami did slip and make that error, so now he's just like them now. Oh, okay. So you are gonna to do the same type of daggers and all that crap. Cool it down. But again, no one's interested in being effective. Everyone's interested in being right. I'm right. They're wrong. Same with Trump. But no one's saying, you know what, guys? Can we have a conversation about what's most effective? What's most effective? What's most effective? Now, in regards to leading this up, Newsom is not a heavyweight fighter. Mandami's not a heavyweight fighter. But I do know that Trump's a heavyweight fighter. And we all know that. He's proven that time and time again. He can go 12 rounds. He can go extra innings. Trump has survived more political assassinations than I think anybody in the history of political assassinations. Trump survived more business assassinations. Trump's survived more real assassinations. Like, the guy is like...
Teflon Don. They call him Teflon, right? Don.
So in that reality, no battle plan and no candidate is perfect. We know that, right, Len? So I think that this is definitely probably went the direction that most people would think, because, again, to unwind the massive amount of inflation we have and battling the fact that we should be having a recession just simply because we haven't had a correction and things are inflated, and we've talked
since
about
2008.
Right? So all of these different things that go hand in hand, right, that are out there, and all these red flags, all of these different things we talk about. So given all that, it is going to take time for the pain that all of us feel, which everything is expensive. Everyone knows that. Insurance is expensive. Light is expensive. Water is expensive. Gas is expensive. Tax is expensive. Groceries, which doesn't surprise me why people would vote a little bit that way, because people, again, are short-term focused and not long-term focused. But at the same time, I think this gives all Trump and co., or Trump in group, or Trump in gang, or whatever you want to call it, MAGA group, whatever, gives them an opportunity to go, okay, cool. Now we can rearrange our battle plan and adjust our plan, because they have a 4-year plan. Any good executive would have had a 4-year plan them going in this. Now I think it's about them pivoting and focusing and going on offense again. That, I think, is what you're going to see, because these guys are heavyweights, and I think they care, even though he's not going to get elected to another term. I love how he just teases everybody and makes everybody go crazy by saying that. He does that on purpose to make everybody lose their minds. He does that. Everybody boils out of their brains. We all know it's not going to happen, because we know it can't happen, right? But that's the comfort of America, right? Is knowing those things. So that's what politicians should be fighting for, is knowing the comfort of America, the promise of America. But I think he's going to turn it around just simply because he's a fighter and he's a championship round guy, that kind of politician and business guy. But I think the long-term people around him that need him to stay successful long-term need him to anyways for their own, good. JD Vance, Hegsfa, all the people close to him, all the new and up and coming people on Republican side of stuff that are in his camp, they all need him to stay successful, because they need to stay successful long term. So I think this gives them a golden opportunity to see the weaknesses that they had, right? To do a SWOT analysis, because this shows them all their leaks. Now they know all their leaks. Now they can really go, and if they would have won, if these midterms weren't the way they were, and they would have favored them, they would have got even more comfortable and lazy, and they wouldn't have gone on offense. I think this is a wake up for them. And now they go, shoot, now we know our leaks. Now we can go on offense, and we can double down, triple down, quadruple down. At least that's what I'm thinking they're going to do. That's what I would do. That's what you would do if you were in those situations. That, to me, seems the most pragmatic way of thinking politically on how to do it. Just my thoughts. That's where I think it's going to go with it. It definitely was not good news for them in a big sense. There's some big things that they now have to overcome. They have now more work to do than I think they had to do. And I think, they might have gotten too comfortable, but I don't hold it against them, because anybody would, with the amount of work they needed to do just to get to where they are in the first 9 or 10 months.
And that's the reason.
That's not a heavy pill to swallow. That's not a heavy plate to clean.
But that's to me, what you just outlined, Chris, is exactly why Trump made a strategic blunder when he ran for president. But he doesn't care because all he cares about is winning. Like on the day he was elected, he already won. So everything that happens from here on out, I think he cares about what his legacy is going to be, but he already accomplished what he set out to do. And here's the reason why I say that. Okay, if I'm Trump and I know that all of these changes need to happen, I'm going to make it seem worse than what it is. So then when it happens, you don't react in a different way because I already told you what was going to happen. So one of the things that he should have done is said, listen, I'm going to make America great again. But you know what? Before things get better, it's going to get worse for a while. Think about it. Right now, the United States has cancer and we've been suffering from now I'm not telling you that I agree with this, but if I'm him, this is what I would say is, look, the American people have suffered under the Biden administration. You saw it was a disaster. And right now, America has cancer. And so in order for you to fix cancer, you have to have a surgery. When you get a surgery, it's going to be painful for a while. So yes, you're going to see prices go up for a short while, because in order for us to get the debt down and the deficit down, prices are going to go up because there's going to be this reaction. The housing market's going to slip for a while, but once we get everything regulated, the interest rates are going to come down because the Federal Reserve is going to recognize that prices are stabilized. And then once we get the cost for oil to go down and the different energy costs, because we're getting more people to leave this whole Green New Deal, we're going to have more efficient forms of energy being created. And because of that, after the first year to 18 months, you just got to hang in there with me. Mark my words. This is going to get better, but it's going to get worse. So if we can just eat, a pile of hay and broccoli and alfalfa sprouts for a while, we'll have some filet mignon during the second part of my term. Are you guys with me? Yes, we're with you. And then when it happens and they're like, oh crap, gas is going up. Remember, I told you this was going to happen. I promise you that it's going to get better. And here's my economists. Talk to them about why it's going to get worse. Blah, 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 blah. Chart. Facts, statistic, historical analysis. Okay, now it makes sense. So then they speak to their logical brain. Then I'm going to come back in after the logical person comes in and say, listen, as I mentioned, as we said, it's going to get worse for a short while, but wouldn't you rather it get worse for a little while for it to be long-term better? Because once my plan is in place, the next person who comes in from the Republican Party, they're just going to continue to exercise these different practices. So if we're doing well, you don't have to worry about those Democrats coming in. You don't have to worry about the left coming in. You don't have to worry about their policies ruining everything, because it's going to be better and you're going to know it, and you're going to also vote for us even if you were historically Democrat. You give a message like that, dude, I'm voting for you. Why? Because you gave it to me straight. But what did he do? Oh, I'm going to end the war in 24 hours. Just watch. When I get in, it wouldn't have gone in a war for the first place, but when I get in, it's going to be so easy. And that whole thing going on in Iran, with Israel, I'm going to get in there. I'm a deal maker. That's what I do. I'm a deal maker, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to change everything. And so you give us all of these promises that you can't keep. And when that happens, what ends up happening is you have less than 1 year later, you have all of these increased expectations. Last point that I'll make. Think about most forms of conflict. Most forms of conflict happen because of unmet expectations. If I give you a promise and I don't fulfill it, whether I'm your parent, your husband, your brother, or your boss, if I don't fulfill a promise I gave, and then you're negatively impacted because you thought things were going to go a certain way. And when you feel pain and I tell you you're not in pain, That's a hard pill to swallow, Chris. And that's the reason why I believe midterm elections, the Republican Party is going to get slaughtered unless they make a dramatic change between now and November of 2026.
I think that's fully justified. And I think that a lot of people would say yes to that. But the reality, I think, is that most people do not want to know what they have to go through in order to get what they need or want. I just think that that's just
that's a valid point.
I think if you give it to people straight up front, they're going to go, I'm going to stick with where I'm at, right? So I would love to believe that I think for a certain group of people, that is okay. Because you're like, okay, cool. This journey is going to be hard. This journey is going to be tough. And I think that those types of people who subscribe to that type of living, and you can give them that stuff up front and they do it, those are the types of people who are already moving and shaking the world right now. That's the top 20. The Pareto principle, those people are in Atlas Shrugged. Those are the producers of the world. Those are the movers and the shakers. Those are the Elon Musks. Those are people like you and I at the level that we're at. Those are the people making things move. I don't think that if you tell people what they would have to go through, which is the mess we're going through in order to get back at the end of the sunshine and rainbows, they would. I don't think they'd vote. I don't think they would have voted, because the competition on the other side was sunshine and rainbows into the oblivion of hell, and that was Kamala Harris. Everything's great in sunshine. So if he would have given everybody that ugly pill up front, then yeah. Now what makes people like you and I mad is pragmatic people. Is we go, why didn't you just say this crap up front? Why didn't you just say this is going to happen? Or maybe it's just, we got to trust it. Or, hey, we're on this road now or this bus now, and we got to just ride the bus as long as we can. I just don't think that, I think that his expectations, I don't know, maybe I think that we all should have been more guarded with our expectations of how fast things should have turned around or could turn around, given where we were at. Maybe that's just how I looked at it. Because here's what I can tell you. Here's what I will truthfully admit to you and to anyone else. You can feel the difference right now. Even at every level, you could feel it. It's kind of where you're like, dude, this is unreasonable. This is unreasonable. It's uncomfortable, unreasonable. It's unreasonable that if it's unreasonable for me or unreasonable for anybody that's making the type of income you're making, or in any regards, if you're making over $500,000 a year and it's unreasonable for you, it feels unreasonable. You have a big family, it's unreasonable. And that's the group of people, like I was saying earlier, Len, that are sitting here going, dude, this sucks, bro. Dude, this is shitty. Because those are the people that did above and beyond. Because now it's not just affecting the people that follow the rules, it's affecting the people who follow the rules and went above and beyond the rules. Right? The overachievers are now feeling it. Right? Mm-hmm. And I think Tucker Carlson, mentioned something like that on one of his episodes or something, where he's talking about a group of people. The group of people is even this group of people that ordinarily is not affected is being affected. It is. Because think about it. If you live in New York and you make $1 million a year, you're only taking home $447,000 or $448,000 or something like that. You're taking home barely right above 50% or right under 50%. And if Mandami wants to increase it by 2%, that means if you're making $1 million a year or more, let's just say you're making $1 million a year in New York City, you're going to take home less than $500,000 under Mandami.
Yeah, but to your point, they also understand typically the tax loopholes and all of those, and many of them were besides those.
Yeah, but
I understand your point is good.
Here's the thing, though, Len. $1 million a year isn't a lot anymore.
Especially not in New York.
If you have a family of, if you have a husband and wife, if you're a husband and wife with 5 kids or 4 kids, $500,000, that's a decent life.
Don't live in New York.
Don't live in New York, baby. You should go live in Kentucky. But I 100% agree with you. Trump did dig himself into a hole, but he knew he was going to do that. Now,
because all he wanted to do was win. That's the thing. And
because you could look at it, Len. I understand your point, Len, because you can look at it from a point of going, shoot. Because realistically, if Trump did not win, you know Robert Greene's work really well. So Let's just look at this case. There's a section in Mastery when he talks about death ground, be it putting yourself on death ground, right? Like Trump was on death ground regardless of his choice. Trump was on death ground. Like he was dying business and politically and socially. So if Trump didn't win, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. Trump was probably very motivated because if Trump didn't win, he would have been dead in all accounts. He would have been dead financially, politically. Everything would have been dead for him. He would have been destroyed in every way possible. So I agree with you to the sense that he was probably very motivated to win simply because of preservation, self-preservation.
Yeah, you talking about those 34 those 34 felony cases. He'd have been in jail right now, bro. No, okay, but here's the thing though, because
even though we know they were BS,
but some of them
were all BS.
He was a felon, bro. Like come on, bro. He had like some of his financial dealing. Now, do I think that he should have been indicted all of these years after that? No. Do I think the indictments were politically motivated? Yes. Do I think he did those things? Yes. Do I think it should have been litigated in the court of public opinion? Not necessarily. So I understand that. So I really want to be clear about that.
Lawsuits, though.
Okay,
those are
I agree.
Civil infractions.
I agree.
They're
now,
not criminal infractions.
Okay, so let's just take, because what you talked about is a very interesting point, and I really want to dig into it just a little bit more, and then we can go on to some health related topics and stuff like that. But I really, we can switch gears, but I really want to dig into this a little bit more. So here's the thing. You mentioned that Trump was, at this place where he had to do whatever was necessary to get elected. But let's backtrack. He's been in the public face for over 30 years, but politically, in terms of people wanting him to be a president, it's been the last 10 years, the last 9 years, 10 years or so, right? Because he served in one office. He wasn't in for the next 4 years. So that's 8 years right there. And then the time for him to run in this other year, let's just call that another 2 years. That's 10 years. At least half of the electorate was very much in favor of him. And so when Harris ran such a bad campaign, he still could have won by telling us the truth. Because look, you either get into office and then you screw the country because you've given us unrealistic expectations, or you tell us to get ready to take our medicine. And when it happens, we know, okay, we're expecting this because you told me. Because the thing is that if you tell me something that I should expect, even though I don't like it, I'm willing to endure it if on the other side it's worth it. Now, I think to your point, I think you're coming from the perspective that you don't think the American people are smart enough to think long term. I do definitely agree that taking a more honest approach and saying we're going to have to eat broccoli and kale for the first 6 to 18 months would have allowed some of the voters who might have otherwise voted for him, they probably would have sat this one out. But I think there would have been other people that says, finally, somebody who's giving me the truth. And he say, if he said, look, I made a lot of mistakes in my first term. January 6th didn't go the way that I expected. BBC didn't make it any better because they sparsed my words and put them together. That's not what I said. But regardless, I wish that day wouldn't have happened. If he would have said that and said, look, there were some mistakes that I made during my first term that I've learned from. I had 4 years to think about it. And I'm telling you, I'm turning a new leaf on America. We're going to make America great again because we're going to make America honest again, and it starts with me, and it's gonna suck for the first 6 to 12 months. Some people would have been like, screw that, I don't want that, I want rainbows and butterflies. I think more people would have said, you know what, I wasn't gonna vote, but this guy, he's finally telling me something that I already knew. Because I think we're smart enough as an electorate to know that it's going to take a while to swing the world's largest economy. You just can't do it overnight. It's going to take time. People know that. But don't tell us that it's going to be rainbows and butterflies when it's not. It's going to suck for a while. And smart people really know that. So my question to you is
What
do
is
you
the question?
think, so here's my question. My question is do you think that it's better for a politician to lie to you up front to get into office so that everybody can figure out that they're lying, or tell the truth and risk not getting elected at all?
Okay. I think that based on the track record so far, I think, at least what you've seen, is look, every politician is a liar. They're all liars.
Does that make it okay, bro? Does that make it okay?
No, it's not. I'm not saying it does.
Gosh.
I'm not saying it does. But what I will say is that there are physical things that you could see that have already changed and are already being implemented under Trump. You can already see them. You can already feel them. Otherwise, you wouldn't see the tension you see, right? The ICE stuff, the immigration stuff, the budgeting stuff, the changes in how the government's running and working. You're seeing these things, right? I look at it and think about it this way, because we mentioned, look, Trump with politics. Trump was flirting with running for president for a very long time, 20, 30 years. He's been flirting with it. I mean, there's tapes of him on Oprah Winfrey back in the 2000s, right? And Oprah going, oh my God, we should run together. We'd be a great team. I mean, you know, she should look at those perspectives and look at how they used to talk about it. We're not here to discuss that, right? But what we are here to discuss is Trump. I'm not shocked that Trump wanted to do tariffs. He didn't get to do it in his first term, but we knew he was going to do it because he's always said he wanted to do it. He's talked about
that for a long time. I agree.
So the thing that I get with Trump, why I feel comfortable with Trump as a politician, even though I know 20% of what he says is probably bullshit. If I'm just doing 80 per year,
20%.
I'm going to give him 80%. Yeah, I'm going to give him 80%.
Okay.
Because he needs time. He needs time. He needs time. The jury's still out.
Okay.
And I know what he accomplished on the first end, and I know that even with what he's still doing and still trying to do, even with the fact that he's being fought on every play that he's trying to make, still even now with judicial injunctions and all the crap that we try to pull, and this government shutdown, Democrats purposely did the shutdown. The only reason why the shutdown ended is because those 8 senators said the hell with Schumer and broke rank. If those guys would have broke rank, we still would have been shut down. It still needs to go to Congress or something like that, I think.
Okay.
But I haven't seen the latest update on it. You could probably look it up. But to my point here with this is with Trump, or whatever we're talking about here, is he is, you already know what you're going to get. So yeah, my expectation is he's a blowhard and he's going to say stuff and he's going to embellish. We already know that. So, you know, it's just like, you know, if you're married to a Latina woman or you're married to a Persian woman, you know the concept of Mexican time or Persian time. If your wife says that they're going to be ready in an hour, it really means they're going to be ready in 2 hours, right?
Yep, I know a little bit about that.
You know, you just say,
right.
Okay, honey. So if Trump says we're gonna reduce prices in 6 months, you know it's going to be a year and a half. You just say, okay, Trump. But
when he says 24 hours, bro, and it's going to happen just like that.
Now that's this idiocy. But here's my point to that. Here's the point. Here's my point to that. Okay. We all happily watch baseball games and football games, and we all happily listen to what managers and coaches say they're going to do, even players. Look, Tom Brady's the best quarterback in football, bar none. He's the best football captain of all times. But there's a lot of times where he had a plan and said he was going to do stuff, and it didn't happen. But guess what? You know where Brady was always good? Where Brady always won? You could always count on Brady in the fourth quarter. Because Brady was a closer. And everyone would always doubt Brady. You'd always doubt, oh my God, he's screwing it up. Even Mahomes on the Chiefs. Mahomes closes out. Brady closes out. Trump closes out. Those guys tell us. Elon Musk is a closer. Look at all the battle that Elon Musk just got 75% shareholder approval to give him a $1 trillion incentive pay package. $1 trillion. Why? Because they know Elon's a closer. Trump won because he's a closer. Mandami's a closer. He just needs to get his ideals correct. He's a closer. Anybody who can win a political election like that's a closer. He's a closer. Look, Trump's a closer. So Trump's going to close out and he's going to get these stuff. Watch what happens when the tariff checks roll in. Americans start getting paid from the GDP of the country again. Watch when the prices come down. Watch, gas is already coming down in Texas. I know you're in California, Lynn, but gas is about to dip below $2 a gallon in Texas right now. I have not seen, since I've been to Texas, I haven't seen go below $2 a gallon. And I've been in Texas since summer of 2022. So
yeah,
I'm just saying,
food prices are still going up and restaurant prices are going up.
Hey, it's going to take time for that. Walmart reduced their prices. Walmart's dropping stuff. So there are things in the works that are going to happen. But I can tell you right now that everyone always underestimates the trend effect. And Ray Dalio talks about this extensively, where he says, you might put a policy in place today and not see the effects of it until 4 years from now, 5 years from now, 3 years from now.
Then say that. It's okay if you have a coherent plan, articulate that. He doesn't even have a plan for the Affordable Care Act that he's been talking about for the past 9 years. So he doesn't have a plan. He's not a policy guy. And that's part of the challenge, is that he speaks from the gut, man. He draws from the hip. And as a president, you need to at least have people around you that are policy wonks. Like, he needs a DeSantis that's nearby, even though DeSantis could never run the country. But he gets people that are yes men, and DeSantis isn't. I don't like DeSantis personally, but he's not a yes man.
Let me ask you this: DeSantis or Newsom? Which do you pick?
As what?
As a president.
I would honestly pick Gavin Newsom over DeSantis. Whoa, honestly, bro. Now I would do it, with vomit in my mouth, but I would because I don't. Because one,
DeSantis is a good libertarian style government. He doesn't.
I think he'd be a good number 2, but he's not a good number 1. To me, when you make
you're sticking a dagger in my heart right now with that.
I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry.
Air for you.
Now, he would not be my first choice as the Democratic nominee. I hope somebody else in the next 3 years comes up. I would even vote for a Republican if they ran on the right issues. Like, I'm not a party guy. Like, again, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, so I have no horse in the race.
What's your issue with DeSantis, though?
My issue with DeSantis?
Great executive. He's a great executive.
Bro, okay. My number 1 issue with DeSantis, is personal. It's personal. When you run as the governor of a state on this whole agenda of wokeness, but when you're talking about taking out certain books and eliminating a part of our history from the history books and making it illegal, you're literally taking out a portion of American history on which the foundation of this country was built. And for you to just poo-poo that and set it to the side, that tells me that you don't care about my people. And when you don't care about my people, that means that you don't care about me. And so I have a really big problem with that. Now, as a number 2, I could stomach it as long as the person that's the number 1 has good character and ethics and all of those things as it relates to my interest. So do I think that DeSantis is a bad human being? No, I don't. Do I think that he's not learned as it relates to, the influx and the importance of the African American tradition here in the country? I think he's woefully undereducated about that. And so he uses some of the talking points that he gets and he filters that through his uneducated lens as it relates to our people. And then he makes that an entire agenda called the woke agenda. I have a really big problem with that. So
let me ask you this.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, okay? In regards to that, and maybe it might get a little bit sensitive for some people, but I'm just curious on it because the history thing, the whole thing of history. I don't know much about. I haven't read a lot into what you're saying, but I will read into that, specifically what you're talking about. But when you bring up that point of going, whatever, it sounds to me like there's a dismissal of African American culture or history.
Mm-hmm.
That also goes hand in hand. Say what you want to say about Confederacy, right? I'm not a Confederate person. I'm not on that. I don't align with that. But that can also be said for the elimination of Confederate monuments and Confederate literature or Confederate history as well, because that
It's not the same. It's not the same. But go ahead, finish your point.
But is that not a part of American history too? Like saying, like, for example, if we race the history of I don't even know the name of the general. Who is the main general?
General Lee.
General Lee?
Yeah.
If we erase his history, like because he's,
I don't think we should. I've never said. I think that's the wrong approach as well.
Okay, but is that what he was?
So ask your question about that, because I really want to make sure I set the record clear.
So was he doing that? Is he because I'm not clear on it. Was he doing something or taking a position where he was trying to eliminate the ability to access history, African American history or African American culture? Was he doing that?
His perspective from a 30,000 foot view is that talking about the atrocities of slavery and is an affront to American history, because what it does is it drives a woke agenda. And because of that woke agenda, there are people who are looking for certain entitlements and handouts. And because they're learning about a people who was disenfranchised, it puts a black eye on the country. And therefore it's better to eliminate those books from our schools. And so you touched on a point about General Lee. To me, this is what I understand, is that if you don't know your history, then it's bound to repeat itself. And so like I've never been a proponent of not talking about the Holocaust. I've never been a proponent about not talking about the internment of Chinese when they were brought here. I've never been against talking about the Japanese internment and how they received reparations. I've never been against the whole idea of erasing the Confederate history because of what happened. But you got to tell the full story. Now, here's the problem. The reason why when you brought it up in the beginning, I said it's not the same, is because there is a very interesting way in which people celebrate the history of the Confederacy. And that's the problem, because when you celebrate the history of the Confederacy and all of the atrocities, because that whole economic system was driven by slavery. The whole economic system was. And so when that's the case and that part of it is celebrated and uplifted, then that's the problem. Like if you talk about, hey, listen, the Confederacy and the Southern states, they had an economic engine fueled by slavery, and this was the amount of money, and it helped propel America to be one of the greatest nations on the planet in terms of their rise in a capitalistic system and their economic benefits and all of those things. Keep all of that in there, but talk about both sides, and don't I hear an echo with my voice, but anyway, don't uplift one to the detriment of the other. Tell equal but keep it factual. That's my whole take on it.
I wonder if, and to close out and transition here to something sweet, a little bit sweet, maybe not so sweet, right? I wonder if we had a chance to sit and ask DeSantis for a point of clarification, say, did you mean, and this is just my knee jerk in hearing you say this for the first time, did you mean that people utilize that topic, meaning African American slavery and all of what you're talking about? Do you mean, Mr. DeSantis, that when you bring that up, you mean that normally when that comes in the conversation, people are taking advantage of that to use that to weaponize that in wokeness or woke agenda? Or do you actually really believe what the other half, which is what you're saying, you think to believe at this point, maybe, or maybe you don't believe it wholeheartedly, which is you're trying to eliminate that as that in history. Like you're trying to say that shouldn't be discussed or talked about. Or are you saying, look, whenever that's brought up, we don't need to keep bringing that up to drive a woke agenda, much like people also utilize, LGBT or homosexuality to drive a woke agenda.
And the issue that we have is that those things are not the same, Chris.
Right. So I would ask for a point of clarity because I'm confused. I'm not. So what I'm saying to you, Len, is I'm 50-50 on what you're saying right now because I would need to ask him and say, hey, here's what I'm hearing from my good friend Len, and it's very compelling to me. And I don't agree with it, but my knee jerk in my brain is going to seek to ask you first this point of clarity to make 100% judgment on what I believe you to believe, your position. And that question to me that pops to my mind right now is when you say we shouldn't talk about African American slavery and that topic, do you say that because people use that as a point to weaponize it to drive a woke agenda, or do you say that because we really shouldn't remember that? And that's
okay. So I got a question for you. Okay, I got a question for you. At what point is it ever a good idea to remove books that are historical in nature? When has that ever been a good idea? Now, if we're talking about reading like the Communist Manifesto, that is a philosophy and a belief. When we talk about Mein Kampf, that is a person's philosophy and a belief and worldview. That's not what we're talking about. Now, if you made the argument, like, let's just say, for example, there were Malcolm X's speeches that should be taken out. Okay, I wouldn't agree with that, but I can understand that better because that is a philosophy and an approach. Now, what DeSantis is talking about is taking out of the curriculum in schools that, there was a time for slavery and it was an economic engine that drove America economically. That's part of the history. You can't take that out. Whether you agree with the fact that it happened or not, or that it should have happened or not, or how people even use it as a tool to suggest that this was a bad thing that happened. You shouldn't have the right to be able to dictate what parts of history is told and what part of history isn't. You just can't do that. That's the issue that I have with him. And that's what he's proposing. So I don't know how any way he could spin that. You can't get out of that.
Yeah, I would love to get clarity on all of that because I don't agree with taking history out of any curriculum because we all know if you don't know history, history repeats itself. And I think a lot of that goes on both sides. On both sides. It happens on both sides because you see a lot of history being under attack in plain sight in regards to, other sides of stuff. But I totally agree. I think, and again, that goes back to my point of what we really should be educating people in America or students in America is on these principles of tolerance and productive measure and citizenship and all of these and civics and here's where we went wrong as a country, but look how fast we fixed it. Yeah, we had this issue, but every country's had that issue, and look how fast we fixed it. Look how fast we fixed it. We fixed it. Now, maybe we haven't fixed everything, but everything's always a work in progress, right? But we definitely fixed that problem, and we fixed it pretty fast. And a lot of people gave their life to fix it. A lot of people gave their life to fix it. And a lot of people, I think, still continue to give their lives to fix it. And to erase any point of history, whether it's good or bad, that is completely unacceptable because that right there is intolerant. That right there shows you have something to hide. That right there shows you have something to hide. You need to hide that.
Yeah.
So,
Germany does not walk away from that black eye on their history and culture at all. Now, some people would argue listening to that point and say, yeah, they went really, really woke. Okay, you can make that assumption, but regardless of how they interpreted how to use that information, the key is being responsible in how you use it, not negating that information altogether.
But the basis,
so I applaud Germany for that.
Yeah, but the basis also of America too, though, and the basis also of Christian values is that generational sin does not exist. So
that's correct.
I can't take the sin of my forefathers that may or may not have been in the South or the North. I don't know. but I
Correct.
definitely know I can't buy their sins. So that's why I don't agree with reparations. And I don't want to get into reparations or anything like that, but
Yeah.
I shouldn't hold those sins. So there is going to come a point in time, in case of Germany, where people that are living are no longer going to even know that anymore. Now, it doesn't mean we don't talk about it for history's sake, like, hey, but we shouldn't pass that shame to people anymore. Like, oh, Germany, you should shame yourself for the Holocaust, because the people living in that country now, by and large, they weren't even alive during that time. So
yeah, reparations should have happened back in
Already.
1865, not 2025. So I agree with
I'm
you
gonna
there.
transition. You know what the best reparations are? You know
Tell
what
me.
the best reparations are going to be, Len? You're going to smile. In fact, I want a selfie when you get yours. When you get your tariff check in the mail, I want a selfie.
Yeah, when I get my tariff check, I'll send you that. So don't hold your breath. Okay.
Hey, you want to know what's nice? Everybody gets that reparation. With that being said, if you like the content, I know it got a little spicy today. It was good. Like or subscribe, engage, comment. We'd love to hear. And Len, have a phenomenal week. We'll see you on the next one.
All right, same to you.
Bye.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.